Okay. Um, I want to make an announcement for Mrs. Wolf. Did she make all the food today, even though she wasn't feeling well? A lot of it, and thanks to you as well for always providing lunch for all those who come here in need. Thank you so much. Um, okay, let's begin. So we are in the middle of chapter 48 and 49. And as we said last time, chapters 48, 49, leading into 50 are very philosophical chapters. If we haven't thought that the Tanya is philosophical up until now we like really dive fully into all of creation and discussing how Hashem created the world and all the discussions of the philosophers. And the Alter Rebbe is going to bring in the Rambam today. Now, I do want to do a little bit of a review because there's a reason for this, right? We're not just getting philosophical for no reason. We're not just like taking a little short break and advertising how Hashem created the world. So if you'll remember, chapter 46. Okay, actually, even before chapter 46, we've been talking all throughout the Tanya about Avodas Hashem and how to increase in your Avodas Hashem, how to make it relatable. And specifically, over the last, 10 chapters or so, we've been talking about how important it is to be working on your Ava and Yira, how to have a passionate experience in your connection to the Eibishter. And we were talking about how to get to that place where I could feel impassioned. What will actually impact me where I feel deeply connected to the Eibishter? And so the Alter Rebbe has kind of been going through this like troubleshooting phase where he's teaching us, well, if this works for you, let's go with this. If this works for you, let's go with this. Chapter 46, if you will recall, we spoke about the concept of kamayim apanim lepanim, which was just as water reflects face, so too does the heart of man reflect the heart of another man. And we gave a mashal there about how Hashem is like this king who goes out of his palace, out into the city, to the dregs of society, pulls basically us out of the dregs of society, brings us into his innermost chamber and covers us with hugs and kisses and unites his soul with our soul. There's like a clinging. And we spoke about what that actually means. And the reason why we're bringing this mashal is actually to experience how, out of gratitude to the Eibishter and all the goodness and greatness that he gives to us, maybe if we thought about this mashal a little bit, it will help us kind of repay or respond to Hashem's love for us. And if I could just even try to imagine, try to understand all the greatness and the goodness that Hashem brings to me, to my personal world, maybe I'll be able to have more of an impassioned avodah towards the Eibishter. Happens to be that someone recently asked me, basically I learned b'chavrasa bitachon with a friend of mine. And after the tragedy on Sunday, I'm sure everyone, but definitely we, were feeling a bit shook. And she brought up a very human question of, I don't understand. Like, I just don't understand. I really feel shaken. It's so hard for me to wrap my head around it. And in our discussion, what we basically concluded was there's obviously no way to understand this, and there are no answers. And the only solace I found is this concept of kamayim apanim lupanim, where sometimes we look at a situation and it's an insanely terrible situation and it's awful. And we're looking at that black spot in history. And again, not to take away from the fact that it's black and it's horrible and it's horrific. But we look at the milestones based on those black spots, as opposed to this is one black spot on a very white page, right? And there's so much whiteness on this whole page, and there's so much goodness, and there's so much greatness, and there's so much bounty that Hashem brings to us. And the only comfort that I'm finding is, let me not just look at the black spot. I know it's there, and I can't comprehend it, and I don't know what to make of it. But I also know that there's also so much incredible, delicious love and kindness that Hashem brings to my world. And I don't want to forget about that just because there's a human tendency to focus on negativity. and to focus on what's wrong instead of what is. And that's the only thing that's kind of like keeping me going when it comes to like the realm of bitachon. So do I pretend to have this incredible sense of calm and serenity and know that Hashem is taking care of everything and I'm just leaning on him, and of course this is for the good? Not quite there yet. But what I am doing is saying, I know that this is awful, but I also know there's a lot of greatness and goodness and miracles. And it's so easy for us to look past them or celebrate them in the moment and then go on, because that's what we just want and expect. And we'd rather just focus on our fears. But Kamayim Apanim Apanim is an important concept to remember. That mashal, at least for me, is what's keeping me going for right now. Sorry. So back to what we were talking about. That measure of gratitude is supposed to be something that will help us feel more emotionally connected or feeling ava and yira towards the Eibishter. And again, I just want to remind you, over the last few classes, we've been talking about yira, many classes back actually. And yira is not supposed to, again, be about fear. It's more about awareness, an awareness of the Eibishter, that you see that his presence is felt. Like that story that I always say about Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, where he gave a bracha to his students that before he passed away, that Hashem should give you a bracha that you should have as much Yirah Shamayim of him as you have of your neighbors. And his Chassidim, his Talmidim were confused, if anything, a little bit offended. They said, Rebbe, I think we have a little bit more Yirah Shamayim for Hashem than our neighbors. And he says, Halavai. Right? Because it's so easy for us to look at this world and be aware to a mother's opinion, a friend's opinion, a neighbor's opinion, as opposed to seeing and recognizing that Hashem is in my world. And you see this also in halacha. There's a difference between a gazlan and a ganif. A thief that steals in the open, all he has to do is repay what he stole, as opposed to a thief who goes under the darkness of night and make sure that no person actually sees him, and he's hiding from the cameras. Hashem sees you. Hashem knows what you're doing. He doesn't care. He cares that people might see him, but he doesn't care about the fact that Hashem might see him. He has to pay double. It's the same. Let's say they both stole the same merchandise. Doesn't matter. The fact that he has such a lack of Yirah Shamayim, but he has a Yirah of people, he's punished for that. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is same example, same concept here. When we're talking about increasing in our yira, we're not talking about, oh, God is standing over me with with a hammer, and he will smite me as soon as I perform some sort of avera. I mean, that kind of awareness might be your awareness. The point is that you have an awareness of God in your life, hopefully as much as you have an awareness of everything else that you have in your life. And if you don't, that's okay. We're all human and we're trying to work on that. That's what Yirah Shamayim is. Great. We moved on from there. We were speaking about gratitude. We were speaking about the concept of reciprocity, right? Hashem invests so much in us. We should at least reciprocate somewhat. We spoke about Yetzias Mitzrayim, and then we fast forward into this very philosophical concept. And just to do a brief review of what we spoke about last week, remember, if you could remember, we were speaking about Ur Ein Seif, which was, it was 2 weeks ago. That's why it's hazy. 2 weeks ago, we spoke about Ur Ein Seif, this light of Hashem. Again, this is like an expression of his light. It's not quite Hashem, obviously. And that light is like a mirror to Hashem, right? So imagine you're yourself and you're looking in the mirror. Yes, everything looks exactly the same, but it's not you. It's a mirror, right? Just like the light of the sun. So if there's a ray coming out of the sun, if the sun were to disappear, of course, the ray disappears as well. The ray is nothing other than the light, the source, but it is still something, even though it doesn't see itself as anything other than part of the source, okay? And then we spoke about how Hashem, in order to create a creation, had to remove. There's no way that creation could actually happen from Ur Ein Seif. Anything that would come from Ur Ein Seif would only have godly reality stamped into it. There wouldn't be the ability for anything to see itself as other if it came from Ur Ein Seif, because imagine a mirrored image trying to create something. All it would create, if it could create something, would be other mirrored images of yourself. I'm just imagining like when you're standing in a bathroom, there's a few different mirrors. So there's like you, the mirror, but then there's like the back of you, and there's this of you, and there's that of you, but it's all mirroring the same thing. And it's all coming off of that mirrored image ultimately. So Orient Side wouldn't be able to create something if there wasn't some sort of removal. So Hashem had to create removal. Hashem had to create darkness. Hashem had to create hiddenness. And from that hiddenness, there was the ability to introduce the concept of, oh, I can't see him. And if I can't see him, now there's space for creation to exist. Okay? And we spoke about that. We gave it some terms, Kabbalistic terms. Mimali kalamim, Saiviv kalamim. If you remember, Saiviv is surrounding, Mimali means it fills. Mimali is uniquely tailor-made to how the recipient is going to receive it. So not everyone receives the same godly energy, the same godly light. Saiviv experiences the same influence of godly light, and we spoke about that, and you could go back to that class if you need to remember that. But what we drew from that class was, oftentimes we look at creation and what we want to see is light, how Hashem is actively creating, right? So what does it look like when the sun is shining, when everything is clear? That's what creation is. And really what creation comes from, both of them are creation, but something we don't often think about is the hiddenness is really creation. The hiddenness is where we feel Hashem most, because that's where we actually can relate to being another and also seeing that there is God. So it's from the hiddenness that really creation comes and is manifest. Does that make sense? Okay. So now we could start with this class. Okay. We're going to get a little bit philosophical again, and then we're going to try to get practical with these concepts. So back to what the Alter Rebbe is saying. The Alter Rebbe says, imagine, right? The fact that a person has an imagination kind of allows us to understand what creation looks like mitzad the Eibishter, from the Hashem's perspective. So what is somewhat the concept? Imagine a person in their mind thinks about a palace, and you're thinking about all the different details of this gorgeous, beautiful palace. It's up on a hill. The doors are made of gold. There's these intricate carvings on the staircases. Every window has 12 panels of glass. The floors are epoxy, and the doors are, a certain kind of wood. And you're imagining every single detail of this home. Now, if it were to actually come about, right, if you were to create it, that would take possibly years, maybe decades, to create the incredible creation that you're creating. But in your mind, it could just take a matter of a few minutes. And it only really exists in your mind. And you, by thinking about it, keeps it in existence. If you stop thinking about it, it would no longer exist any longer, right? It's not actual bricks and mortar. It doesn't actually exist. I'm laughing because this is just a random story, but it's in a funny way it connects. When my husband and I went to Ireland, so we went into a taxi, and the man, my husband's drilling him for all this information about Ireland and what do you think of Dublin, and the man's talking and he's talking, and he's basically making himself out to be a very simplistic person. And he kept on saying, bricks and mortar, like this is all we really care about. Just like, the simplicities of life. And the joke is that when we got out of the car, he told us like this exorbitant sum that was not clearly what we were supposed to be paying. He basically cheated us. And we paid probably like double or triple what we had to pay from the airports to where we were staying. And we always laugh about it, like bricks and mortar, right? Like that's all he really cares about, like just like the simplicities of life. That's all that's important, just the bricks and mortar. Meanwhile, he's robbing us and taking a lot more than that. Why is that? What's the connection? So we live in a world where we see a lot of what we think is the real world, right? We're looking at everything. We see this realistic world. We see the details. We see the people. What we don't see is what is truth, which is God. right? We're not experiencing true godliness. We're not experiencing him because that's how Hashem made us. Hashem made us that the hiddenness is how he wants it to actually exist. So if you will get philosophical with me for a second, and this is what the philosophers are talking about, and this is what the Rambam brings, is that all of creation is actually just existing in Hashem's thought. And if Hashem were to stop thinking it for a moment, it would cease to exist. It's all within him. It's all a part of him. And it's interesting because the philosophers will go back and forth trying to understand, like, how did Hashem create the world? Did Hashem create the world from somethingness? Like, did he have something and then from there create it? And the Torah perspective and the Kabbalistic perspective is that Hashem created it from himself. There wasn't an existence like some sort of bricks and mortar, that he took from there and he created more. He created more life from there. No, nothing existed outside of him, and still nothing exists outside of him. We all exist within him. And he, at every given moment, is keeping us in existence with his hiddenness and with his creation. Okay? So from Hashem's perspective, his hiding, his concealment is not actual concealment, right? The concealment is all from our perspective. From his perspective, he's just him, and everything is happening within him, and his creation, his experience is him. From our experience, we're experiencing revelation and concealment and existence and everything else that we perceive to be the world. Okay? So the Alter Rebbe goes through these worlds of existence and he explains them. And we've talked about them before, but we'll just mention them now. So the first world is where the infinite light is and is concealed. And each realm, right? If we're going to talk about it as a realm, it means that it already has hiddenness, right? Olam, which means world, means helem, hiddenness. So if we're going to say like there's a perspective or if there's a world, we're already saying that that is part of Hashem that is hidden. Okay? Because if it's an expression of him, it's already a hiddenness of him. Like the concept of like anytime you try to explain something, you're actually not quite getting to the essence of it, because as soon as you try to explain it, you're limiting it. It's not it, because you're trying to talk about it. So now you're limiting it to the words that you used to describe it, or you're limiting it to the way, the mushal that you're using to help people understand it. So you can't take it. It is truth. And as soon as you try to express it, it's no longer it. It's no longer truth. It's like a concept in the Gemara. So all of these helems, all of these worlds are all expressions of God. They are not actually him. They're all perspectives, and they're all worlds that are emanating from him, that he's squishing himself, he's contracting himself, he's hiding himself so that we could actually see them. Okay? And the first one being Atzilus is the first world that's emanating from him. It's the first plane of consciousness. It knows the Ein Sof, it sees the Ein Sof, and yet it still exists. That's like the first experience coming out of that hiddenness. There's that first introduction of there's creation, but it's within this hiddenness. It feels an otherness, but at the same time sees Hashem entirely. After that comes the Olam Habriya, which is the world of intellect. It's basically, again, these are really hard concepts to understand, but the world of intellect literally means that its consciousness is built on intellect. So the neshames come from this world. The malachim are in this world. Imagine like what sustains them, what they eat is intellect. So ideas, concepts, that's what is happening in that world. And all of them are revolving around godly, right? So godly concepts, godly ideas is all the Olam Habriya. Olam Yisira is where there's a first experience of emotions, which means this is where we see that Hashem expresses himself non-intellectually, but something else, something different. What is that? There's anger, there's sadness, there's fear, there's joy. All this comes from the world of Yitzira. And Olam Asiya, which is technically the worlds that we know, is a world where there isn't a concept of seeing God. right? So finally we get to this place of Hashem is so hidden that he's not ultimately seen. And from Hashem's perspective, of all these worlds, what's the most important of these non-existent worlds is the Elam Asiyah. This one is the one that's most important to him. This one is the reason for all of creation. This is the reason why he's contracting and hiding and squishing himself. It's in order for Asiyah to come aware, to be. An interesting story that Rabbi Paltiel shares. And this is where we're kind of like segueing into how to make this concept practical. So there were many different types of Hasidim, many different types of rabbis. And one, I don't know which, was the type of Hasidus where people would push to hear the Rebbe. So it's interesting, like some Hasidisin were very balabatish. Everyone gets a seat. Everyone could hear the Rebbe. Even children have a place to sit. As you can imagine, our Hasidus is not like that. If you ever went to 770, you'll know and you'll see why. What was interesting was with this specific Hasidus and with this Rebbe, there was a lot of pushing. Okay, so everyone was pushing always to hear the Rebbe. There wasn't space for everyone. This Rebbe passed away and his son took over. And with this new leadership, he decided, this new Rebbe, this young Rebbe, who has previous older Hasidim from his father, he decides now everyone's going to have a seat. We're going to be balabatish. There's going to be space. There's going to be room for each person. And the Hasidim, who had been Hasidim for his father, came to him and they weren't really into it. They thought that there was like something missing, There's something about coming and fighting for your spots and being there, showing up. There's something transformative about the pushing. And so they asked the Rebbe, why do you change things? Again, this is not our Rebbe. So this new Rebbe said, I was there during the pushing. I got pushed. I was around. When there was pushing with my father in my father's era, what I saw was people pushing themselves. In this new era, I see people pushing each other, pushing the other. And it's a very interesting concept. There's a beautiful story, really, because you can see there's contraction, right? But what is getting contracted? Am I contracting myself or am I pushing others to make space for me? And it's a really, really interesting concept because this concept comes up a lot in psychology when it comes to, like, let's say boundary making, just to like go away from Tanya for a second and talk about boundaries. So people talk about this a lot. Like if I want to set a boundary, I'm going to tell the people around me how to behave. You can do this and you can do that. I don't like when you do this. Make sure that you don't trigger me in this way. And there's a lot of room for that in the therapy world. That's what a lot of people will say, like, make sure you set your boundaries so people know where you end and they begin. And for some people who don't understand, how to respect other people's space, it's very important to inform them where their space is. And I hear where that's coming from. And at the same time, take this story and you could see that's not a Torah perspective. It's not a Jewish perspective to push others or to tell others they have to contract in order to make space or room for me. If anything, the Alter Rebbe is saying we should learn from the Eibishter, the creator of the entire world, who decided to make creation. And the only way to make creation was to contract himself to make space for creation. And from the story, you could see this Rebbe saying, it's not working anymore. So the squeezing yourself, that's an avaida. That has to happen. If you forget that part and you start squeezing others to make room for you, then something's wrong in the process. Something is not, it's not aligned. That's not how it's supposed to be. And we could talk about boundaries more a different time. But there's when we talk about squeezing, interesting because we were talking about this earlier in a previous class. We were talking about some sort of challenge. Someone brought up a challenge that was coming up for her. And the mashal that came to me was a concept that we call divine design, which is the concept of Hashgacha Pratis, where Hashem orchestrates your entire experience. And sometimes it's hard. It's hard when you're challenged with something and it keeps on coming back at you. right? So, for example, let's say a person is challenged with, let's say for me, I'm challenged with my ego being like a perfectionist streak. I'm really not perfect, but I would love for everyone to think that I am, right? So that's really egotistical. And so every time I see that come up for me, and it comes up for me on a daily basis, so it's sometimes hard. It gets a little tiresome when Hashem is making the same challenge that you've looked at again and again, and you've tried to contract yourself to work on it, but it keeps coming, right? So we were talking about this in this group that I was facilitating earlier, and something that came up for me was, imagine Hashem is taking this, let's say, perfectionism or your obsession with ego, talking about myself, and he's bringing it to you on a tray. And that tray is your challenge. And he's saying, honey, my dear, I want you to know that this is for you. I'm serving this to you right now. And on the serving tray, which is the challenge, there's a bunch of different little things that you could pick up off of that tray. The tray is there in order to provide a service. It's not to make you suffer. It's there because you have something to gain from, to learn from, to deepen each time. And as tiresome as it is for the same challenge to be coming up for you again and again, there's a reason for it. There's a byproduct that you're supposed to be getting. There's some sort of like opening that you're supposed to realize through this challenge that you have. Oh, I need to deepen in this area. Oh, I need to deepen in that area. Right? So like, let's say for example, the ego trip is coming up for me, but it's coming up specifically with it came in a situation with parenting. Oh, I see I need to be a little bit more humble more when it comes to my parenting. Or actually I need to work on my honesty. Like truthfulness is something that I'm struggling with because my ego is more important than being truthful. So I will not be perfectly honest because I need to cover up or protect my ego. Or, oh, I'm seeing that I'm trying to protect my ego and I'm not doing kibbut of aim properly, right? So this is just a serving tray. It's just a way, it's almost like a looking glass through which now I could see there's so many different areas of my life that need work, that need help. And Hashem is giving this to me as an opportunity for me to take something off the tray. So I'll take this glass today and I'll take that glass tomorrow. And as hard as it is to keep on coming back at something, it's so important to see that there's purpose and reason for it. And it's hidden, and Hashem is contracting himself, and it's not perfectly clear of exactly where I'm supposed to be growing, but it's there for a reason. So there's a famous story about Rav Hillel Paracher, who was a very, very, very special chassid, and was also a chassid who, talking about perfectionism, like really took being a chassid to another level, right? So there's many different stories of where everyone's doing one thing and he's going just one step further. And there was a time, I'm not exactly sure what the circumstances were, but there was some sort of like fast that everybody was supposed to be fasting for. And the minion or the community decided it's okay for us to break the fast to have some sort of, to have a meal. And Rav Hillel decided not to. He decided everyone else was going to break their fast and have the meal, and he's going to fast a little bit further than everybody else. And one of the older chassidim looked at him and they're like, Hillel, you're trying very hard to look very holy. And Hillel began to cry, and it really struck him, like it really hurt him. And when he finished, he was saying, just know that whenever I'm doing these things, it's not in order for me to get closer to me. It's for me to get closer to you, to Hashem. Meaning, this is not an ego trip. I'm not trying so hard or involving myself or getting busy with all of these different things in order for me to feel holier. It's for me to feel more of Hashem in my life. So what we're getting at over here is along the same lines of what we've been discussing earlier in different prakim, which is this concept of reciprocity / gratitude, where if Hashem is going through this whole incredible endeavor to contract himself and to hide himself just so we could literally exist and perceive our own existence, can we maybe do a little bit of contraction ourselves too and reciprocate what Hashem is giving to us? Right? So Hashem is literally, all of creation is him squishing himself, his contraction, so that we could be here and think that we're here. Can I do a little bit of that on my own? Is there something that I could do? So in previous chapters, we've discussed it. I believe in chapter Chav Zayin, Pere, chapter 27, where we spoke about the concept of iskafia, right? And if I remember correctly, the way we were speaking about the concept of iskafia was, and I loved this mashal, was like, imagine you're coming to the table. Whatever it is that you're coming to an experience, let's say, whatever the experience is that Hashem set up for you. If you just like ate and drank imagine I'm about to get on the Peloton, right? I'm about to work out. So if I just ate like a full ziti and a Caesar salad and a cup of soup, and then I'm going to try to work out, it's going to be hard, right? It's going to be difficult. I'm feeling heavy. I'm feeling sluggish. It's going to impact my workout. It's not going to be as great as I'd like it to be, right? So the concept of iskafia then, when we were talking about it, was kind of like, don't weigh yourself down with chaimer, with materialism. A lot of times people will talk about iskafia as like, ugh, don't involve yourself in materialism, as if like materialism is a bad thing. Chas v'shalom, we talk again and again how important it is to engage with this world and to bring awareness of God to this world. That's the whole point of why we're here. So don't say feh to the world. That's not really the point. I mean, if it helps you get to a place where you're squishing yourself, fine. If that's like a tactic that you're using, a technique to help you not lust after the world, fine. But really, what's the concept of iskafia? Don't be weighed down by it. Feel light. Feel like there's space inside of you to work out, right? So when Hashem presents you the Aveda, the Peloton, whatever the workout schedule is going to be, that you won't be sluggish and weighed down by all of that chaimer, right? So you just finished watching a bunch of movies or talking Lashon Hara or like steeping yourself in whatever it is, it's going to be harder to come to whatever it is Hashem has prepared for you on this tray. It will be. So, and I shouldn't even be giving those examples because some of those examples are actually wrongdoing. I should be talking about like literally food. Like just don't stuff yourself with a lot of neutrality or things that are permissible to you because it weighs you down. Okay. So here, when we're talking about iskafia, we're kind of taking it to a higher level. And we're saying, or we're talking about it maybe more in its idealized sense instead of getting it to be really practical. And we're saying, can you make space for Hashem in your world? So when we say iskafia, we're saying, I want to resist bringing something into my experience that is neutral, that is okay for me to technically bring into my experience, but is it going to help me in my Avaida? And is it possible for me to squish myself, contract myself a little to make more space for Abishter in my life, right? So just because I really want, I really want to go to that game. I don't know, I'm thinking about my kids, like, let's say my kids wants to go to a Dodger game like that's technically fine, right? It's not like like a baseball game where things could be not sneeze. It's a Dodger game, like it's baseball, it's American, right? And maybe I would let him go. I'm not saying anything's wrong with it. I'm just thinking of neutrality, right? But do I have to, right? If I just for a moment thought about what Hashem is doing at every given moment to allow me and my little life to exist, can I also make some space for Abishter in my world? And it doesn't have to be so tit for tat, right? We've spoken about this again and again, that's not a relationship. But what we're trying to do is reintroduce reciprocity on the basis of a relationship, right? So go back to the concept of, let's say, a husband and wife. Not everything is keeping score. And he did 6 hours of babysitting, so I'm going to do 6 hours of babysitting too. It's not about like point keeping. That's not what reciprocity is supposed to be in a relationship. It's much more about the love and care that this is based on. Because I love you, because I care for you, because I see you, I really see your existence in my life. I want to show and reciprocate that. I want to act from that place of gratitude. I want to act from that place of I care. And I'm investing even more into this relationship because I see the relationship for what it is, not the relationship is the scorekeeping and the points keeping. I just want to make sure that that's very clear. Yeah? So here, when the Alter Rebbe is saying, again, that concept of kamayim apanim lepanim, Hashem is showing us so much love, right? Hashem is mirroring to us a tremendous amount of joy and love and care and investment. And Kain Leiva Adam al Adam would be us saying, I see you, Hashem. And maybe the Dodgers game is a big example, and that would be a little hard for my son to accept. But let's just say something, each person to themselves, right? To say, like, do I really need it? Is this my whole life, or is my identity, I am a Yid and I make space for Hashem in my life? The famous story about, such an interesting story about a bunch of men who came out of Russia, and the Rebbe orchestrated that they would go to, like, they had a whole program, and they were arranged to go meet Rav Moshe Feinstein. And they had a very interesting discussion with Rav Moshe. Rav Moshe was also from Russia. And at one point, Rav Moshe asked one of these Hasidim who came out of Russia, he asked, like, how do you do it? Like, how do you keep Torah and mitzvahs in Russia? Absolute persecution. Like, he knew what was happening there. How'd you do it? And the Chassid's response was so touching to him. The response was, I'm a Yid. What else am I supposed to do? Like, this is like, what's the question? I don't even get what the question is. Like, this is, you got to do what you got to do. And it's fascinating, right? Because people coming to America, and the Rebbe talks about this, the Frierdiker Rebbe talks about this, how because we weren't facing so much opposition in ways, it didn't bring out of us the identity of Jew, right? So even though it was very, very, very challenging, our at our core, we weren't being challenged, right? Our Yiddishkeit wasn't being challenged. It's not by chance that we're in the middle of Hanukkah, where the whole concept of who we were, our identity, Yiddishkeit itself was being challenged. What that created in response was a complete rebellion of that small, tiny, flickering light against the whole hedonist empire. What happens is that if we have a recognition without being challenged, right? We're living in a time of absolute plenty. There's never been a better time to live than the time we live in now. And at the same time, in a different way, it's the hardest time to ever live because it's so good. We always find something to complain about. Because it's so great, that's why we're suffering. That's why it's so crazy making. That's why we're losing sight of the plot. This Pere is here to show us, to tell us, we have to remind ourselves that loving the Eibishter has to come from a place of really seeing who we are at our core, at our identity. We are a part of the existence of the Eibishter. We live within the Eibishter's thoughts. We are him. We are not created from something other than him. We are him. We can't see it, but we are him. And if we broaden our perspective to really know that and to see that, and to recognize what the Eibishter is doing at every given moment to keep us in existence, that should allow us to experience a little bit of reciprocity. And maybe we would respond with this concept of, like, let me squish myself a little, right? And all of us are doing it right now. You squished yourself by coming to a shir. You could have been home. You could have been shopping. There's lots of deals going on right now. You could have been, I don't know, making supper. You could have been taking care of other things. Yeah, you could have been shopping on Newly. You could have been working. You could have been making money to support yourself, take care of yourself. And instead, you're here, right? That is squishing. That is you saying, I want more of Hashem in my world than my own ratzon, than my own will. I'm going to push this aside a little bit, refine myself a little bit by making space for God in my world. That's seeing Him in your space. That's seeing the point of the hiddenness. So even though He's not there and it's not clear and you look around and you don't see Him, you are uncovering Him by that experience of Iskafia. And that's the purpose of creation. And there's nothing more important to the Abishter than you doing that. And we could see this mostly from Shema, right? What is Shema? Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad is this declaration of unity, of Achdus Hashem. I see you, Hashem, every facet of you, everything is you. And what do we say right after that? The experience that should come right after that is V'ahavta. How do I love you, Hashem? V'ahavta es Hashem Elokecha b'chol levavcha, with all of my heart, b'chol nafshecha, b'chol me'adecha. So with all of my desires, I'm pushing aside my desires and I'm making space for you. B'chol nafshecha, my concern about my wealth and my well-being. And I could be very concerned about eating nutritionally healthful food. And I could be very concerned about getting on the Peloton and doing that workout. And at the same time, I make space for Abishter in my life. And b'chol me'adecha means with my livelihood, where my livelihood is important, but I make space for Hashem first. There's Iskafia first. I love Hashem, and then there's my me'adecha, my livelihood. And it's expressed in every facet of my life. And the more that I could think about this, the more that I could really identify with who I am. I am a Jew. I am a Yid. I live within Hashem's experience, and I have Him within me. And the more that I could live that and experience that, the more I am living truth, and I'm expressing truth. And that, again, I know I said every single time, every single class, is the purpose of creation. And I know a lot of us could look at Tanya and every single chapter and you could say, oh, this is the purpose of creation. This is the purpose of creation. This is really the purpose of creation, to unveil the Abishter, to reveal Him, to reveal beyond His hiddenness, and to pull aside the curtain and say, I see you, and I want to respond in kind. And that was definitely the concept of the Yidden during the times of Hanukkah. And we have that energy now. We're in the times of Hanukkah. Tonight is the fourth night. So tomorrow's like when we cross over to the other side of the menorah, and we're in like the second part of Hanukkah. But we still have this energy that we're small, but we are so great because we see truth and we know truth and we can live and identify with truth. And the more that we experience that, the more we bring a little more refinement to this world and a little bit closer to what Mashiach is supposed to be, which is absolute Das Hashem, absolute revelation of Him in this world. So give us all a bracha that we should see it, live it, and taste it. And yeah, I should be there right there with you, speaking to myself too. Yeah. Have a beautiful Hanukkah, everybody. Feilach Hanukkah. 43.